Here are some early season takeaways from the Southern Hemisphere teams ahead of the Rugby Championship and on the basis of a couple of weeks of international rugby that we have just watched. What have we learnt about these teams? Where are they heading? What changes have already bedded in and what changes can we expect to happen in the months ahead? That's what this video is touching on. I'm Tim, this is Egg Chasers. Your thoughts in the comments down below, and give the video a thumbs up, hit subscribe as well. So yeah, these four Rugby Championship teams haven't played since the Rugby World Cup. New Zealand just got a 2-0 series win over England. South Africa drew a 1-1 series with Ireland. Play Portugal this weekend, and then we're into the Rugby Championship. Australia managed to beat Wales 2-0, and Argentina split a series with France. I'll go through each one of these teams in turn. Some of the questions that are unanswered, some of the questions that have been answered, and where it looks like they're heading. What trajectory are they on? I'm going to start with New Zealand and Scott Robertson installed as the head coach. What I like about him straight away, decisive. He straight away seemed very confident on what his first choice 23 was. Keeping selection consistent except for injuries between Test 1 and Test 2 against England. His 23, the starting 15 may well change over time, but when you compare to Fozzie, who would chop and change a lot, Scott Robertson seems to have a level of consistency in selection that is encouraging from where I sit. A 2-0 series win over England should be encouraging as well, although I think it's no less than New Zealand should have aimed for. Anything other than a 2-0 win I think would have been seen as a big disappointment. But fair play, they won the test matches. They could have won it more convincingly, and I'd say one of the first negatives from New Zealand that Scott Robertson can work on is that killer instinct. Perfect example in that second test, Stephen Perifetta, 2 men on his inside for an easy try, went for the outside, didn't score. That's not the traditional New Zealand model of doing things, is it? When you think of New Zealand, you think of a team who sometimes just get a sniff in a 5-minute window, bang, bang, they're done, and the game is over. Another negative, line out, was absolutely diabolical. They need to sort their set piece out. Again, the retirement of Whitelock and Retallick, big issue there, and that's one of the positions where there is some evolution to happen. Tuipulotu and Scott Barrett look like the pair for the while, but how's that position going to build some depth? Generally speaking, there's really good depth across the New Zealand squad, but that's one area. Another one is centre. Barrett and Ioane have built a really good partnership. What would it look like with someone a bit more orthodox in that centre pairing? Would it bring the best out of either Ioane or Barrett or both? I mean, they're both such good players. They can play in the back three, can Barrett and Ioane, but an interesting one to watch there. And the other one is scrum half, where obviously Cam Roigard is out injured. Aaron Smith, a generational talent, one of the greatest ever to play the game in that position, has retired. So a hole there, and who is going to fill it ultimately? Will it be Finlay Christie? TJ Perinara injured. And, well, the one that I'm looking at, just on the strength of the cameo that he made against England, could Ratima be the boy? It seemed to up the tempo, and him and Beauden Barrett coming on changed the game for New Zealand. They do have Stardust in their side. When you've got a team with Ardie Savia, D-Mac, Beauden Barrett, Geordie Barrett, you have always got a chance at winning games. They've proven that, but they've got a little bit of mongrel in them as well. And the foundations in that front five, well, front row, second row could do with a bit more depth, but front row are very good, and we're going to see a changed team against Fiji, aren't we? With Tamaiti Williams coming into the front row, for example. So yeah, I think they're in a good spot. And with Will Jordan, Richie Mwanga, Shannon Frizzell still to come back. The litmus test for New Zealand, which is why I've called this video Collision Course, because it feels like, you know, World Cup final 9 months ago. These two are on a collision course in South Africa. South Africa and New Zealand, we're going to know a lot more about where New Zealand are at, where South Africa are at, after those 2 games in Johannesburg and Cape Town, where I will be. I'm freshly back from South Africa. Actually brought the sun back with me. Summer seems to have arrived, just for a day at least, in the UK. So I'm going to enjoy that, but I'll be back out to South Africa. And again, if you want to follow the journey, make sure you don't miss any videos. Hit subscribe on the channel. And let's move over to South Africa then, because 1-1 series draw with Ireland. I get the sense that was slightly disappointing because of the manner of the first Test victory when they beat Ireland up, and then the reversal to be quite so significant. Partly you have to credit Ireland, but then also South Africa kind of just felt to me like they just took their foot off the gas a little bit. And now they've got some injuries to contend with. They had a couple before, but now some significant injuries ahead of the Rugby Championship. They may be without guys like Pieter-Steph du Toit, Malcolm Marks for an extended period of time. Will they be back by the Rugby Championship? We'll wait and see on that one. I mean, we've seen the powers of the physio team and the bloody mindedness of some of the players to make sure they get back. We saw that with Sia Khaleesi at the Rugby World Cup. So we'll wait and see on that one. The one thing South Africa always have had, always will have, is depth of talent. No shortage of talent. But if they're without some of those real key individuals, that could be significant. Who is going to step up? That is the big question for South Africa. Sometimes I reckon having so many great options can actually make a job for a coach harder. Because how do you, when you've got 10 guys that are all, there's the tiniest little margin between them, how do you decide who to pick? And the counterfactual, what would happen if you picked that one? It's really hard. I mean, it's a lovely problem to have if you're Rassie Erasmus. The one thing he has done over the last 5-6 years is focus on the characters, the character of the individual. When there's so little to choose between them in terms of talent, what's the substance of the bloke like? And I think with some of these new characters, that's what we're going to learn about. What is the substance of some of these new faces that are coming in? Can they fulfil the role within the team as well as just being superb rugby players? They need to identify the, to use a South African phrase, the good oaks that are there. And yeah, well, when you just think about depth, just England, Ireland, Wales, other countries have got prop issues. Tight head prop, Frans Malherbe, Vincent Koch, Trevor Nyakane, Thomas du Toit. Inconsistency can't even get a look in. He would start for England. So, yeah. I mean, I think probably one of the biggest challenges for South Africa, mindset. They seem to be very comfortable as underdogs and don't wear the tag of favourites quite as confidently. And maybe we saw a little bit of that between those two tests against Ireland. Am I right on that? Is that how you see it? Because it's interesting, when you watched Chasing the Sun 2, and they were already world champions, but throughout that World Cup in France, Rassie Erasmus and his other coaching staff, Jacques Nienaber did it as well, did a brilliant job at just kind of poking the bear a little bit and getting the team fired up, getting them to fight against something, showing them the media, talking them down. And when it seems like when this South African team feel like they've got something to prove, like in that first test against Ireland, they haven't beaten them in 8 years. They lost to them at the Rugby World Cup. We've got something to prove. Then they just find a little bit of something, a little bit about them to go and drop the hammer. When they're expected to win, and when they don't have that same reason to fight, then they seem to maybe just step the foot off the gas a little bit. And that is the challenge for South Africa. I think it's a mindset one. They need to be able to wear that double world champion back-to-back, going through a third world championship. They need to wear that tag in the way that, and going back to New Zealand, South Africa, the two big rivals, the way that Richie McCaw, Dan Carter's New Zealand wore it between 2011 and 2015, when their win percentage was 90%. So I think that's the big challenge for South Africa, is psychological. But then again, another challenge is bedding in the next generation. Sasha Feinberg and Gomazulu there, a future world player of the year when I look at him right now. But where does he fit in? How do the pieces of the jigsaw fit in, keeping the talent that you've already got, and then ushering in the new blood? Some other question marks. Lock. What's going to happen at lock? Is Salman Murat the one of the future characters at lock? Could Pieter-Steph du Toit revert back to lock because there are so many good back row? Who is the leadership going to be? Where's Apelele Fassi in the rankings? Is Willie Leroux going to be moved aside once he gets his 100 caps, or is he going to be continued to be selected? Lots of questions. I think one of the most interesting ones though is, how is this new style of play going to bed in? Are they just trying things at this point, like in the first test against Ireland, just all action, coast to coast, very little kicking? Were they trying that just to push the boundary and then they'll come back from that? I suspect that's probably what will happen. But watching how Jerry Flannery and Tony Brown work alongside Rassie Erasmus in the next couple of years is going to be very interesting. They have lots of questions to answer, but they absolutely have the personnel to give those answers. Australia, much more of a question mark over them. It's an encouraging start. 2 wins over Wales, a Welsh team that beat them in the Rugby World Cup only 9 months ago. And actually, to compare those 2 matchups against Wales, I think that the biggest change, and I talked about mindset shift being the big challenge for South Africa, I think that was probably the challenge for Australia, and Joe Schmidt has achieved that, because the way that, I mean, I was there in Lyon when Wales got a record victory against Australia, and the look in those Australian players' faces, they were done. They were shot. They wanted to be anywhere else but there right then. They were not enjoying themselves in any way, and they actually look like they've got a bit of a spring in their step, like they want to be there. They're engaged and they're motivated, and that's a credit to Joe Schmidt. How good this Australia team are, well, that's hard to tell at this point, because, and with the greatest of respect to Wales, they were only playing Wales. They open up in the Rugby Championship at home to South Africa. That's a very different challenge altogether. I've just said how South Africa have to start upping their win percentage between Rugby World Cups to be completely established as the greatest team of all time. New Zealand 2011-2015 could claim to be better than them because of their win percentage between World Cups. That ruthlessness from South Africa, is that going to arrive on Australian shores? And if it is, how good is this team really? I'm hoping that Australia are legit and are a genuinely really good team, because the British and Irish Lions tour there next summer, and rugby needs Australia to be good, not just for the Lions tour, although that is very significant, but just with the landscape of world rugby. Australia, one of the 2-time winners, one of the always competitive, and to go out in the pool stages as they did was an absolute disaster for Australia. And hopefully that is the rock bottom, and they're on the way up from here to somewhere good. But there are lots of fundamental key issues that can't be solved by Joe Schmidt. The size and the amount of money that the NRL has, the awful way that Australia has been administered on a local and a national level by the unions there, it's shocking. But there are some good positive stories. Filippo Daugunu is one of those. He's absolutely just arrived like a rocket onto the international stage. And when you think about guys like Koroibete and Nwanga Nitawase, not available for the Wallabies, and this guy comes in and absolutely smashes it, that's great. But then other stories, all the different variations of Wright, Tom Wright, Liam Wright, Fraser McWright, been very, very good. And there's other positive stories besides. So we will see, I guess. Cautiously, Australia should be optimistic. Let's see how the Rugby Championship goes, though, because that's a different kettle of fish altogether. And finally, Argentina, who got a 1-1 series draw against France. A very young, inexperienced French team, so it's hard to judge Argentina. Argentina, when I look at them, they always arrive at a Rugby World Cup and manage to pull it together. It could be completely bonkers behind the scenes. It could be a total mess. The players could all be falling out, getting in trouble, acting like South American playboys, and they'll manage to pull it together and get themselves to a World Cup semi-final. And they did again in 2023. They've got exceptional players. They do not have a lot of depth, and they blow hot and cold, as Argentina always do, especially the year after a World Cup. They could blow properly cold, and I don't know how the Rugby Championship is going to go for them. They'll probably do what they do and pull out one ridiculous win away somewhere they should never win, and then they'll get pumped at home. It could well happen. They have been shifting their style over the last few years. They've been going a little bit faster and a bit looser. They have got some good young props. You look at Vivas and Gajo and Bello, I'm not sure how the pronunciation is there, but we've got a lot of good young props. Gomez Cordella, but they just need to just step it up another notch. Halfbacks is the biggest question mark. Albanoz and Bertranou and these guys have sort of threatened to be good at scrum half, but they've been without a really good scrum half for a long time, and it has held back how they play, and they need to kind of nail that position down. And Santi Carreras at fly half. Can Santi Carreras be the boy? And I mean week in, week out in the Rugby Championship, game after game, he has incredible highlight reel moments, but then he can just go quiet for a bit. And that is, that Argentinian identity of blowing hot and cold. They need someone that can just grab that team by the scruff of the neck, give them a bit of identity. With guys like Chocobares, like Malia, they've got some deadly players. And actually look at that, the evolution of the team. Juan Martín Gonzalez, when he gets back into the side, is sort of taking over the mantle from Matera, and Malia, for example, taking over the mantle from Buffelli. You've got a new generation of talent. Can they get them all on the pitch at the same time and all in the right mindset to actually deliver? That remains to be seen. We've only seen a little bit of them from France. Let's see how they go against New Zealand to start in the Rugby Championship. I cannot wait. It's good. So that starts, what is it, August the 10th, Rugby Championship. I'm heading back out to... I've never seen a Rugby Championship game live. I've seen South Africa v New Zealand once, and that was the Rugby World Cup final. And even though it was a Rugby World Cup final, in a way, I've kind of got even greater expectations for the two games at Ellis Park and in Cape Town, because I've been told when I was over in South Africa, it's like, oh, that Ellis Park atmosphere is going to be spicy, and Cape Town, because of the local support for the All Blacks, historically, that could be a really, really fascinating and just amazing atmosphere to experience. So I cannot wait to get back out there again. I'll be sat on my sofa watching the Rugby Championship, and in fact, more to the point, the rugby this weekend, which there still is, and I will be bringing you my thoughts following full time in those games. New Zealand, Fiji, South Africa, Portugal, and there is another one that's significant as well. Scotland, Chile, but there's another one involving these four teams. I know it's not Australia, Argentina. Who do Argentina play? I can't remember. Someone. Whoever they're playing, I'll be across it for you on the channel. Give the video a thumbs up, hit subscribe, leave your comments down below. See you on the next one.